I get this crazy idea.
Good morning, Springfield. Good morning, everyone, wherever you are. Welcome to the Career Talk event on this day, Wednesday, December 2, 2020. Even though you are not at school, but I'm really glad that we could make this event happen, okay? This is our very first time to hold a Career Talk where we invite professionals and speakers from the outside so that they could talk to our students, sharing their insight, and hopefully you can grab the insight and grab the inspiration. And this morning, I am very grateful that we are here this morning with the assistance of our small team from students. Let me mention name one by one. You will see, you have the chance to talk with them, to see them talking in front of you. We have Corey from grade 11. We have Angie Kolenia from grade 10. We do have from grade 9, there are Angeline Suryadi, there are Jessalyn, and there is Odelin. Okay, thank you for your hard work so that we can make this event happen. And hopefully today will be a good day for everyone. And before we start, I'd like to ask our Springfield PB3 campus head of school, Mr. Rod, to lead in the opening prayer. Mr. Rod, you can unmute yourself and please pray for us.
Okay, good morning, teachers. Good morning, students. At the end of this school year, welcome to our Career Talk Day. Thank you to Mr. Hardy in particular and many others who have helped pull this together. And I pray that you have a really, really good day and enjoy the interaction with the special speakers we've got this morning. But let me just open in prayer. Lord God, we thank you for this opportunity to meet together on this beautiful Wednesday morning. We ask, Lord, that you guide and be with our speakers as they present their talks to students, teachers this morning. We ask, Lord, that we can come away better informed. What are the possibilities for each of the students as toward universities and careers into the future? So we ask your blessing on all that takes place this morning and commit it to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Rod. Now, before we start, I'd like to just share a bit about what will happen today. So we have 3 sessions today. On the first session, everyone will have to attend this session by watching it through YouTube, okay, from grade 9 to grade 12. We do have some parents watching as well. Good morning, parents. And we do have some few Raffles Hill students who also watching this YouTube streaming. Good morning to everyone from Cibubur, Springfield, Raffles Hills. Okay. But the second and the third session, each student has signed up for their own sessions. Okay. Later on, the students will be introducing to you what you will have for today. Make sure that you have received my email for the link that you can go for each breakout session. Okay. To open this session, I'll pass it on to Jessalyn and Angeline. There you go, girls.
Good morning to everyone watching this live from YouTube. My name is Jessalyn. You can call me Jessie. I'm from grade 9, and this is Angie from grade 9.
Good morning to all our viewers today. As Jessie has said, I'm Angie from grade 9, and me along with some other students will be the co-hosts for Future Me. So what's Future Me going to be about?
Future Me will be talking about what might be our future career path, and it's a nice start to building our future.
That's right. We'll be having many great speakers who specialize in the career topics you've chosen. I'm sure there'll be many lessons to be learned.
Also, and here today, on this main session, we have 2 speakers.
Yes, that's right. We're going to have Mr. Adith, who is our G9 mathematics teacher, and Mr. Brian, the high school business teacher, to start the session.
Let's welcome them now.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry it's lagging. Good morning, Springfield students and parents. Welcome to Springfield Career Talk 2020 with me, Pa Adith, and Mr. Brian. We are the hosts for this morning session. So for the first session, it's about data-driven innovation and decision-making. At the end of our session, there will be an important announcement. So we can call it a gift from our speakers. Stay tuned, everyone. And maybe you're wondering, what is data, and then what is big data, and then what are the benefits of learning the big data or organizing it, or what should we do about it, and can it help us to grow our businesses? Maybe you're wondering about that. I know, and several students in Springfield, grade 11, grade 12, they have started their businesses. I heard from Mr. Brian and also Mr. Jason. That's wonderful. And maybe you're wondering, will we be able to help our society just from studying about the data and organize it and get some information from it? I believe that you guys will learn more from speakers. And if you have questions, please type it down in the comments on YouTube. I don't know, over here or over there. Go ahead. Let me start with a professor from Harvard Business School, Professor Emeritus. Her name is Shoshana Zuboff, PhD. Maybe you've heard about her statement. This is what every business has always dreamt of, to have a guarantee that if it places an advertisement, it will be successful. That's their business. They sell certainty. And in order to be successful in their business, you have to have great predictions. And great prediction begins with one imperative. You need a lot of data. So we're going to discuss about data innovation, data-driven innovation with the expert. Since we have the data expert with us, let me just introduce them to you. It's from House of Analytics. House of Analytics is a consultancy focusing on data-driven innovation for businesses. Its main goals today, this morning, is to bridge the gap between data and business innovation. Founded by Sean Taher and Anastasia Maria, this morning they will share insight and inspiration about data could be used to innovate and make important, effective, best decisions. This knowledge is and will be used widely in various areas of business, marketing, operational, logistics, social media, and many others. Without further ado, let's welcome our speakers, Sean and Tasha. We call it that, or Pa, or Bu, or Ka. Welcome.
Thank you, Pak Adith, and thank you everyone who's watching this today and from Springfield School. Thank you for the parents as well. I would like to first thank you to Springfield School for inviting us and this opportunity to House of Analytics. And thank you as well for everyone again for watching. My name is Sean Taher, and I'm here with Anastasia Maria, my business partner, who I've been working closely with. Just to check, can everyone see the screen? Okay, so let me start by introducing our topic. So today's career day from House of Analytics, the topic will be about the value and purpose of data. And House of Analytics is basically focusing in this area where we try to extract insight from data, especially for businesses and organization. And today we're going to talk about three things, and it's going to be about the introduction of data analytics. What is data analytics? What is the purpose of data analytics? The second one is about how can data analytics impact our lives, as well as how we can use it to our own benefit. And the third one is basically the application. So we're going to walk through the case study as well as the examples of how how data analytics can be used in businesses, as well as um, how we can actually use it in different contexts as well. So before we start as well, there's going to be, of course, questions from the audience. And we also would like to invite you to write your questions in this link. So the link is going to be here, the http gg.gg slash ask data. So if any of you wants to ask questions, not only from YouTube comments, but also from a particular document, you can also write it from here. And so without further ado, let's start the presentation. So we want to introduce to you guys first, what is House of Analytics? So House of Analytics is a consultancy focusing on data-driven decisions, where we try to use data as part of our methodology as well as process to improve decisions in businesses and to make them more informed, so that whenever we make a decision, we already know whether it was a bad one or was it a good one. And how we can prove whether it was a bad one or a good one is that we use data or quantitative measures to say that, okay, we found that the decision was impactful or not. And previously, we've also been working with many companies. Many of them were banks, actually, where we've also worked with BCA, Bank Mandiri, Bank BRI. We've also worked with Singapore Airlines in terms of manufacturing, or even the kind of more logistical industry, as well as we've worked with non-profit organizations such as Rachel House and restaurants, as well as a gelato called Viva Reino Gelato. And so our team consists of two people at the moment. So myself, Sean Taher, where I'm mostly experienced in business analytics as well as financial analytics, where it's mostly in the use of data in terms of solving financial problems as well as business problems. And here with my business partner, Tasha. So Tasha, would you like to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. So, where Sean is mainly my role here is
Tasha, I think the microphone is a bit quiet.
oh, okay. Let me switch my microphone first. Okay, can you hear me?
Still quiet.
Hello, everyone. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, it's good now.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Sean. So, hello, everyone. Good morning. So, today I'm with Sean. We're going to have fun today about learning about data and analytics. And whereas Sean previously he has a lot of skills in business analytics, with me, I'm complementing in the human capital space. So, how do we use data make decisions about people? And we're going to also walk through today what is the application of the combination between business and people. How do you apply that in sales and marketing context? So stay tuned and have fun learning with us today.
Okay, thank you so much, Sasha. So, what is data analytics? So, I would like to start by saying that data analytics is basically something that can be used in every kind of situation. Whenever we have a problem, or when we try to make a decision, we try to use data as much as possible. And an example of this is basically a cholera outbreak in London, where there was this particular disease that was very horrible during the 1800s. And during this time, no one really knew how cholera was spreading. People knew what cholera was, people knew how to treat it, but no one really knew how it spread. And a lot of people thought it was airborne because, during the days, everyone was coughing with cholera. And at the same time, no one really knew how to actually measure or even see how disease spread. And so everyone was just guessing. And because everyone was just guessing, everyone was basically trying everything without trying to measure what kind of evidence did they need to see in order to kind of know whether the disease stopped or not. And so Dr. John Snow, basically what he was trying to do was, okay, instead of actually guessing or even saying that it was airborne, he basically wanted to look at a more data-driven approach when it comes to how a disease spread. And the first thing that he looked at was this particular data set. When he was trying to investigate how did people spread or how did the disease spread, he looked at the historical data of where and how did people die. And so what he looked at was, first of all, the name of the people. He looked at the time of death. He then looked at the occupation, and then he looked at the location of the deaths. And so this is an example of that particular data set where we kind of modified it a bit to make it more modern. But basically, this is what he was starting with. And at first glance, it's a bit difficult to say, okay, so, what can I actually get from all of this, right? It's just a name, it's just the time of death. And then, it's basically just describing the person who has died from cholera, right? And so at first glance, you don't really see the kind of value of data from this kind of point of view. But what John Snow did was he transformed that particular data set into a geo-analytics or even a map of London of where these people actually died. And at that time, he was really curious, where did people actually die and where were they living? And if you look into this map, where we found that all of the people who died were staying in this particular area. So in London, John Snow saw that after he plot all of the deaths in the map, he found that the deaths were basically staying in this particular area. And it was most concentrated in this green area where there's a green circle here. And he was really curious, why wasn't it spreading outside of this area? And if it was spreading outside of the area, it would have been basically been the whole of London. But in this particular case, cholera was only spreading around this area. And he was really curious. And so when he did some observation as well as interview, what he found that everyone in this area was drinking in the same pump, which is a water pump. And in here, there was a particular water pump where he observed for a day that everyone from this particular area, from this neighborhood, was using this pump. And when he saw that, he then decided to, ask the government to actually stop the pump. And he waited, to see the result. And he found out that when they stopped the pump, the cholera stopped. And from then on, the conclusion was that cholera wasn't airborne. It was actually spread by bad water, or basically the water pumps were basically dirty and people were drinking from it. And so from this map alone, you can kind of get a sense of how data at first glance can actually be, not valuable at first, but when you transform it into something that is more comprehensible, or even transform it into something of a chart and try to interpret it, it can actually be very powerful. Because in this particular example, what John Snow did was that he basically debunked the theory that cholera was airborne. Because if cholera was airborne, the red dots would have been spreading everywhere in London. But when he found out that the red dots or even the deaths were only concentrated in one particular area, and that one particular area had a water pump in it where everyone was drinking, and they found out that the water pump was actually contaminated with human feces or even human waste, then they just decided that cholera was basically not airborne. It was definitely, was it spreading by the water source. And so from this particular case, it can reflect, today's kind of disease, which is the COVID-19, right? Where even epidemiology nowadays are still using this particular method. This is actually the field of epidemiology, where they're trying to use data as well as geoanalytical methods to see how do the disease spread, how does COVID-19 spread. And so this particular case, even just this kind of data, the name, time of death, and even the location is already powerful enough to understand how does the disease spread. And that's why data in itself is actually not the valuable part, but the conversion of data to information or something that you just saw, the map, is the most valuable part. So the act of data analytics or analyzing data is actually converting data into information. And that requires interpretation, that requires our own human value judgment to actually see how can this data be useful. And from information, it doesn't actually stop there. What Jon Snow did when he converted the data into a map, he then analyzed it further, and from the map itself, he used it for knowledge. And he basically asked questions. Why did the deaths concentrated in one particular area, in that green area that you saw? And the questions of why, as well as understanding what causes the events to happen, is basically what we call knowledge. Knowledge is basically when you start asking questions on why things happen, and based on the knowledge itself, you can then gain insights to then act upon it. And from the knowledge itself, you then start to start to do problem solving, where you then are able to take action. And in this case, Jon Snow knew that what was causing the cholera was basically the water source. And from the water source, right, he then stopped the water source pumps, and he basically recommended the government to clean the water source to stop the contamination, and basically the problem went away. And then from then on, we can see the impact. And from the impact, he basically measured, okay, from the day that the water source stopped, how many people were diagnosed after the event, right? And he found that that he had to measure it again, how many people die from cholera after the water pump closure, right? And he found that the death rates basically went down from the cholera, right? So everything that is valuable with data isn't actually the data itself, but it's actually how we use that particular data to understand what happened, why did it happen, and how can we actually solve it, as well as how do we know whether it's actually impactful or not. So this is what we mean about data analytics. And so Tasha, would you like to share about the application of data analytics?
Sean, before we continue to Tasha, that's a wonderful story, how to describe from beginning, from data to impact. Correct me if I'm wrong, that the data itself, it can be useless or it can be useful. It depends on how we analyze it or how we gather it, and then we use it for our aim, right? So actually, it's really important that we really need people like you guys, a data analyst for business or for something else, right?
Yep.
That's awesome.
That's actually a very, very good question, Pak Adit, especially on how can data be useless or useful. And it really depends on the context, because any kind of data can actually be useful. But again, it depends on how are you able to connect the data from the objective, right? So I think, let's say one good example is about in business, right? Let's say you want to look into revenue, right? Revenue is a very good indicator for how good a business is, right? But then, if you want to look into how healthy a business is, you probably should better look at profit, right? If you want to see a business growing, right, you would want to see revenue. Why? Because revenue comes from sales, right? The more product that you sell, the more revenue that you make, right? And that's usually growing a market share, right? But then when you want to look at how good, or maybe healthy, right? Because healthy means that you also have to take into account of cost, right? Even though, let's say, you're selling a lot of products, but then your cost is also very big, right? And it's also bigger than the revenue, then you wouldn't say your business is healthy, right? Actually, your business is losing money, right? So then the data that you would want to look at is profit, right? So if you think about it, data is useful or even useless depending on the context, as well as on how you actually use it for your objective or what you want to try to find out.
Great, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much as well, Pak Adith. So let's move on to the application of data analytics. So Tasha, would you like to share?
Okay, thank you, Sean. So we've been talking about how to convert the data into information, into insight, into action, as well as impact, right? The question is, how do we do that? How did Jon Snow do that? Basically, there are two things that we need to consider whenever we want to do analysis or whenever we want to create insight as well as action. Number one, we need to understand the symptom. Number two, we need to understand the problem. This is two different things that we may encounter from time to time, and we may switch the roles between symptom and problems. So right now, when we talk about symptom is something that is visible to everyone. It's an indicator that we can see every day. So for example, right? Maybe you have a friend at school that from time to time we see that he or she, they usually are absent within, let's say, 3 days per month. And it's consistent, right? Everyone can see it and everyone says that, oh, he or she is problematic because, this person usually from time to time is always absent. Or maybe from time to time we see him or her usually, oh, just we don't know where they went, just go from class, don't know where, right? When we see that, we usually say, oh, it's a problem. This person is a problem because he's always or she is always absent. What we don't realize is that we switch that role between symptom and problem. That is the symptom. Why? Because we don't know what causes this person to become absent at school or to become absent at class. And so this is the first thing that Jon Snow did, right? What he did back then is not trying to say that, oh, it's airborne. No, right? What he did was, okay, I need to look at the evidence first. So that's why he collected data of who died, where did they die. So he came up with these questions first in order to formulate the problems. If we take a look at next, there is a chart next of revenue from time to time. So if you see here on the y-axis, we have revenue. On the x-axis, we have the year from 2017 to 2020. And we see here that mostly it is declining. So we can say that the revenue is falling over time, right? Whenever we see something like this, our mind intuitively says that, oh, it's a problem. And we try to understand, oh, why is it a problem? But actually, this is a symptom. The problem that causes this might be, there are several different things, several different perspectives, right? So if we take a look at some of the problems that may cause the revenue to fall. It might be because, let's say, oh, they're not keeping up with the market. There are rival competitors that they can catch up. Maybe it's because of a low customer satisfaction, meaning that the customers don't like the products. Or because right now, what we experience now, it's because of poor market conditions, such as the COVID-19 right now, right? Because not a lot of people wanted to buy, they want to save money. So this kind of context needs to be broken down first in order to understand actually what is happening and in order to be able to get the insight. So when we go back to the data and then information, insight, action, and impact, the most important thing that we need to consider before we even take action is actually understanding the context. Because if we don't understand the context, then we won't be able to make the decisions better and also faster. Right? So I'm going to pause here first to see if there are any questions before we move on to how do we put the context into the perspective of using data and analytics in sales and marketing. So maybe Pa Adit or other students would like to ask questions.
I'd like to jump in. This is Mr. Brian. Thanks, Tasha and Sean. Really interesting from a business standpoint as a business teacher. And I think that most business people today are aware of data and the amount of data that can be collected, especially, e-commerce businesses. Do you find that there's some friction between the learning curve of the business owners, understanding the process of gathering the data, interpreting it, and the insights, and then also managing their expectations with what it can show and what it can't show? If you could comment on that, I think it would be pretty insightful for the students to see, how you connect that learning curve on the business side, and then also maybe experienced business people revert to oftentimes their gut reactions for what they should be doing. And do you find it frustrating that you provide them with these meaningful insights and then they reject it all and just go with their gut instinct anyways? If you could comment on any of that, that'd be great.
Okay, maybe regarding to the learning curve itself, you're right that right now a lot of business people understand that the value of data is actually very, very important in how do they run the business. And right now, actually, what we have experienced so far, they were frustrated in, let's say, the way how do the person behind this, right, the analyst or even the business development part, how do they came up with these ideas of how to solve the problem itself? So the process of it, right? Sometimes they actually want to understand it. So they have this intuition, right? They have this experience, a lot of experience, but they don't know the evidence. So a lot of the times, what we experience is that a lot of the business development or the analysts, they don't want to go to the field to understand what is happening. And those are the discrepancies that are happening right now, right? So you have these people who usually do market survey behind desk, and you have this business person who have already 20 years of experience in the field. They know the intuition, but of course they need to catch up, right? They need these analysts to be able to give them the context from the field, but they don't want to go to the field and experience it by themselves to understand what is happening. And sometimes our role in to try to bridge the gap is that we try to make them realize that, hey, you know what? Whenever you want to do this kind of analysis, first what you need to do is to talk. Is not to take a look at the data first, but you need to talk first with a lot of different people and gain different perspective, so that when you try to analyze the data, you already know the objective, number one. Number two, then you already know what kind of data you need to collect. Sometimes what they do in the field is that, oh, you know what? We have a lot of data. Let's collect it all and then let's analyze it. And then came up nothing because they don't have the objective, they don't know the background, and they never talk to the people who's experiencing it. So that's actually what is happening in the field, and how do we try to bridge the gap? Maybe Sean, would you like to add some comments on this
It's
one?
really important to have a good purpose. Yeah, the purpose first.
Yes, correct, correct. So Sean, would you like to add some of your experience so far?
Yep. So I also agree with Tasha as well just now, where it's about connecting the dots, right? We're not here to replace intuition or even gut feelings with data, right? But it's about how can the business experience, right? What's happening in the field be actually connected with the data. And what we're trying to do in this particular data analytics or using data is about how can we actually confirm each other or even say that our gut feeling is right or not, because what happened in the past may not actually be happening now again, right? What's right before may not be right today, especially for business, right? Where we see that business has evolved so much, where before we're using traditional marketing, right? Like billboards, right? Like TV ads. Nowadays we're using YouTube, right? And especially for Instagram ads. And this kind of intuition or even experience requires data to say, our intuition or our, idea were wrong. But just because you're wrong doesn't mean you can't learn from it, right? And what data is here for is to actually learn. Data analytics isn't necessarily to suddenly predict, right? It's here so that we can actually learn better, learn from your mistakes, learn from past experiences, whether they were right or not. And this is actually kind of like a learning process, right? The use of data is actually to make you learn faster and learn more effectively. So that's why we always see data not as kind of like the material or the raw material to actually make things better, but it's actually the process to actually learn things better. So that's why I agree with Tasha, as well as I think that was a very good question with Pat Brian as well, where the businesses always have difficulties in trying to use data, right? Sometimes, but what they need to do is actually learn from it, rather than kind of like, oh, the data says this, okay, we should do this. So it's kind of like, how do we match what we know today and what does the data say? So that's why we say it's always about connecting the dots, because we're trying to connect, what does the data say, what does the field say, what does other people say, right? Does it all connect, right? So that's what we think about data analytics. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was very insightful. If you guys have any questions that you want to ask in the chat that are relevant and related, feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll filter through them and get to them when it's appropriate.
Okay, so shall we move on, Tasha?
Yes. So coming into how we do apply this perspective into our own case study, right? So if we go to the case study, of course, some of you might like or love ice cream or gelato, right? And this is a case that's interesting that we experienced last year. So a gelato store in Bali, they contacted us and they asked us whether they can actually ask for our help to understand and transform their business better. They told us that right now they want to actually transform their business into an experience. And when we ask them, what do you mean by experience, right? So if you, whenever you go to a cafe, whenever you go someplace else, right now in let's say in Jakarta, sometimes you go there not because of you want to eat or you want to drink, right? You go there because it's a communal space where the space is really nice. And it's really nice to go there to talk to people, to talk to your friends, or you go there with your family because of the ambience, because of the smell, you know. And whenever you go to a gelato store, it just screams um it just screams so good, right? It smells so good, and the space is so good, and that's why you want to stay there for hours. And this is what they're trying to achieve here. So if we take a look at a concept where this came up, it's called experience economy, where we don't just sell products, right? But we try to create an experience out of it. And there are stages here, right? So whenever you see, let's say, coffee, there are commodities here, right? Of course, there are the coffee beans. And then after that, if you go to the supermarket, you will see that those coffee beans have already been packaged into a very, very nice packaging, right? With different colors and different brands. That's what we call a product, right? And it's basically is priced for daily consumption, for daily use, where you buy from the supermarket and then you make it on your own at home. The next stage would be service, right? So what differentiates between product and service? The difference is that in service, you don't have to make it by yourself. So you go to a coffee shop and then the barista will make it for you. You just sit there, wait, and then you get the coffee. The difference for service with the experience is this, right? They are priced higher, between 2 to 3 times higher, right? It's the same product, right? It's the same coffee. However, when you go to that place, it's not just about, oh, the coffee is good. Oh, you know, it's because they serve faster. No, it's because when you go there, you are bombarded with the five senses. Whether it's because of the look, the ambience, it's because of the smell, it's because of the way the architecture is placed, and you go there over and over, while you also know that, hey, it's a higher price. It's 2 times, 3 times more expensive than the ones that I usually buy at the supermarket. For example, the example of the experience economy that is usually used as a case study is Starbucks, right? And here, what we try to do is that how do we bring that in from service into experience? So we try to break this down into different perspectives when we discussed with them. Which part do you want to actually consider uh, to go to the experience first? Is it from the product side? Is it from the service side? Is it, let's say, from the commodity side? Or is it the ambience or the place, right? So when we talk with them, we give them different perspective here. And let's say you wanted to go first with the product side, right? You wanted to create experience with the product side. We have here Amorino Gelato. So if you search Amorino Gelato, uh, they try to create a different kind of gelato here, right? It's not just uh, this is the gelato, but they create a shape like a flower. Sometimes they create different special um, shapes where whenever the customers buy them, they will feel that, oh, it's very pretty, you know, it's Instagrammable, and they really, really like it actually, right? Different colors, different shapes. Number two, we also discuss with them whether they want to create some kind of a service side, right? So in the service side, if we take a look at the way the Turkish ice cream is made, right? It's a regular ice cream, actually. But what's interesting is how they make it. They make it something like a show, right? Where people can have fun, people gather there, and then you can laugh with the owner of the Turkish ice cream. Or we can see here, do you want to showcase your commodity, which means that you want to promote something bigger than the gelato itself, like how it's made. So right now, if you go to some restaurants, right, they usually promote, let's say it's an eco-friendly restaurant or it's a vegan restaurant, and they try to showcase this is actually the commodity that we use. It's natural. We don't use anything other than this. It's fresh. Do you want to promote that? And the last thing that we discussed with them is the ambience, right? Or what kind of ambience do you want to bring here, right? Do you want to bring a more Indonesian look, or do you want to bring a more modern look to your audience? And so these different perspectives are the ones that we show them and we discuss with them, taking into a lot of different benchmarks, right? So these are just some of the few benchmarks that we took into perspective. And then what's next, right? Before we even give this output, we try to connect it first, right? So like Sean said, we try to connect the dots first. Before we even came up with that, this is the what we say is the background or the context that we try to create, right? So Sean, would you like to share your experience, our experience actually, of how we came up with connecting the dots using what we call as the customer emotional journey?
Yep. So thank you, Tasha. And so in the case for the experience economy, before we made a recommendation, we became a kind of mystery shopper, right? We wanted to see what do you as a customer actually experience throughout the journey by going into the gelato store, right? So for this particular case, we became the mystery shopper, and a mystery shopper is kind of like pretending to be,
A customer.
exactly, pretending to be a customer to to the gelato store, and then we basically secretly kind of make observation as well as ask questions, as well as kind of take notes on what is actually being experienced, right? So in our journey and our experience as well, we can see that in here, in the y-axis, there's a kind of like a happy and a negative kind of emotion, right? A positive and negative emotion. And we basically try to measure our subjective experience into some kind of value where we can then kind of record as well as look at it even more objectively, right? So in our journey, we first walked into the store, right? And whenever we walk into an ice cream shop or even a gelato store, of course, you're very happy, especially when it's in hot weather like in Indonesia, right? You want to walk into something cold, you want to eat something cold, and you found that, the gelato store has a lot of flavors, right? And so from the start, it's already a very positive emotion, right? But when we walked into the store and we looked at the options, right, we realized that, oh my God, there's a lot of, flavors of the gelato, right? And it's very hard to make a decision because there's like 20 of them. There's like 20 and 50 flavors, and you're like thinking, to yourself, all right, which flavor do I have to pick, right? I want to try all of them, but I have to pick one, right? Or I have to pick two of them. So it's a very hard decision, especially how they're all pretty, right? And when we decide to ask the staff, okay, what's your recommendation, right? What's the most popular flavor in the gelato store? And when we ask them that question, they basically answer to us, oh, it actually depends on your preference. And we were like, what? Yeah, everyone has their preference, right? And so we were kind of taken aback to that because when we asked them, what's the recommendation, they basically hit us another question. Oh, it actually depends on what you like. Well, we don't know what we like, so that's why we
I don't like the situation. Yeah.
exactly. So because of that, we didn't really like, we were kind of like, um, negatively response to that. And so we basically then had to test everything, right? All the free samples. And then when we make the final payment, we were kind of unhappy with that kind of experience, right? Only when we actually get the gelato that we were happy, right? So what we think of this is that, it's fine to have these kind of negative experience, right? But what the ideal journey is basically on the right side here, where we find that actually these kind of negative experience or negative emotions can actually be avoided by actually, the staff being able to recommend us something, right? And then at the same time, they should have actually gave us a kind of like, hey, here's the popular flavor, right? And so something that, we can already decide on, right? And so that's why when we saw the customer journey, the ideal one is actually where the staff is more proactive, as well as more kind of like giving us some kind of extra information or even service in terms of the, offering the gelato, right? And so the solution that we kind of brought, as well as the problems that we found, was that first of all, they weren't really informative and they weren't really recommending the flavors. And based on the findings as a mystery shopper, we then kind of confirmed this as well with the owners, where we found that the staff wasn't actually going through the training quite well, and so we then proposed a solution where the training needs to have a clear standard of procedures or SOP, right? Where they then need to follow a certain set of kind of scenario or questions whenever a customer is being served, so that the employees or staffs are then standardized, right? We don't want one of the staff to be, falling behind the other staff, right? So what we recommended in this instance, right, is that we needed to have the gelato store needed to have a set of standard procedure so that everyone can follow it, and there's some kind of like a script that they can also follow, so that those who are struggling as a staff, right, a gelato staff, won't struggle as much as those who are actually good. Because when we went to the gelato store as well, some of the staff were much better than the others. But what we wanted to do is actually improve the ones who are actually struggling, because they might be shy, they may forget what to say, what to ask, the customers, instead of just serving them gelatos, right? Because they wanted to go to the experience economy, then the standard as well as the service of the employees matter quite a lot, especially if you want to give the customers good experience. And so the third problem as well that we found was the style and layout of the store. And as a mystery shopper as well, we not only did surveys on this, but we also tried to experience it as a customer. And so when we actually tried to, observe as well as become the customer themselves, we found that it was really hard to move. It was really disorganized. And in terms of the interior design, it was a bit weird for a gelato store, because there wasn't a lot of seats. And at the same time, because the space was a bit cramped because of this particular statue that was in there, that's why it took a lot of mobility. And especially for during peak times, it was very, very hard to move around. And it became really hot because of the lack of space. And so because it was hot, the gelato basically melted very quickly. So what we recommended was that they had to optimize the space. And we also recommended a kind of layout where we designed a better a layout for lines, for queuings, right? Because especially for during the afternoon, everyone wanted a gelato because it was hot, right? And so that's why the space mattered a lot. And after the recommendation, we then look into the branding analysis. And when we want to transform from service to an experience economy, the branding matters a lot as well, especially from the social media, where, nowadays, especially Instagram, whenever you want to sell anything, whenever you want to market anything, especially for Indonesia, Instagram or social media is everything nowadays, right? Especially for word of mouth. And when we want to transform, we then looked into the posts as well as the kind of what was it, the contents
Just focus
that
on the product.
Yep, exactly. So it was focusing more towards on the product, right? And if you want to kind of transform more into the experience, the gelato store then has to kind of change the content from the product, where they needed to then showcase more on the service as well as the experience, right? And so we then recommended that their business model then needs to, as well as the Instagram post, needs to post more onto the buildings, the interiors, right? As well as the services that they're giving rather than just on the product itself. So before we move on, is there any questions?
I'll jump in with a little comment there. I really like the example. It's really practical. The changes that, are you able to hear me? It's
Yep.
really practical, the changes that and the insights that you're able to provide with this business. Do you find that smaller businesses have a different mentality when it comes to the data, like in this gelato example, versus a medium or a large size business, and what they're maybe looking for, what sort of insights they're looking for you to provide them with?
Yep. So when it comes to SMEs, definitely there is a kind of a different mindset, right? I think the way to look at them, they tend to be the same, especially for the sales and marketing. They will try to collect data as well as analyze them to see what kind of customers are they trying to target, what kind of customers are actually buying the products, right? But when it comes to the size as well as the methodology of analyzing the data, big companies tend to have more advanced methods as well as more complicated methods, because the size of the data is very different, right? When you're an SME, maybe you're dealing with 50, 100 of customers a day. But when you're a big company, you're dealing with millions or even, hundreds of millions of customers, right? Especially for banks, when it's millions and billions of transactions, right? The kind of data analysis that you tend to do will be very, very different. And even though the aims tend to be the same, but the methodology and the statistical methodology will be very different. So I would say that the mindset tends to be the same, is that it's just that the approach will be very different.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, and excellent. And then, along with that, the recommendations for changes, obviously the cost impact on a small or medium-sized business, it might be more significant. Do you find that those small businesses resist the recommendations and changes that you suggest, especially if it's going to involve, a increase in their expenses, because it's
Yep. Definitely, because especially for big companies, right? It's very hard for them to make changes because there's a lot of bureaucracy and they're much bigger, right? And the steps that they need to take, it has to be much more careful, right? Which is why the analysis that we tend to do for big companies are much more detailed and much more towards like cost benefit analysis, because they have to be very, very careful, right? When it comes to making changes. But for SMEs, because they're much smaller, more flexible, and they don't have as much to lose, if we can say that, as the big companies, right? That's why when it comes to data analytics, they tend to be more flexible, and they try to experiment more, right? And I think that's also kind of like the correct way of looking at it, because I mean, if you're a big company, I would also be very, very careful when it comes to experimenting, right? Because you have a lot more to lose, right? So the data analytics, or the analysis that you would want to make has to be more detailed than SMEs. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Is there any more questions?
If we're entering the Q&A time and there hasn't been any questions coming through from students, could you comment a little bit about, these students are either in the initial stages of thinking of what to study in university. Some of them are selecting, A-level subjects, and a student that's maybe interested in mathematics or science, and what sort of subjects and skills would they want to develop as they go from high school into university, and maybe what sort of majors would they want to?
Okay. So that's actually transitioning very well to our next topic, which is about the role of data scientists and data decision scientists, actually. So Tasha, would you like to take over on this one?
Okay, thank you, Sean. So coming into how do we develop the skills, right? Basically in data analytics, especially, there are two types of skills that usually the new person who wants to explore this must actually foster, right? So we call the data scientists and decision scientists two sides of the same coin, because basically they both of them do analysis. However, the perspective is different. For data scientists, usually it's more it's more towards a technical approach, where the data scientists will explore a lot of statistical methods on how to let's say clean up the data, analyze the data, and create what we call a mathematical modeling or statistical models. And how is this used in business, right? Usually, whenever we create statistical models, mathematical models, it is used for, let's say, number one, projection, or number two, they wanted to create some kind of optimization. So in the case of the Gelato store, for example, whenever they do, let's say, cost benefit analysis, the data scientists will collect the data and then try to find what kind of mathematical or statistical models that are available, and they use that in order to calculate, let's say, in the next 5 years, how much do the Gelato store needs to, let's say, save, right? In order to have a sustainable business, how many percent, if we use one scenario, two scenario, three scenario, right? How many percent can we optimize? So that's the role of the data scientists. Decision scientists, on the other hand, they are actually the same, right? So they usually also will analyze the data, but the perspective is towards a more a big picture point of view. So for the decision makers, it's more towards the business side, right? So if, let's say, we wanted to do like the case of Gelato store, right? If we want to create an experience economy, what kind of experience can we bring to the table? So that's the role of the decision scientist. So we also, as a decision scientist, collect data, but in a more broad space, right? So in the case of the Gelato store, we collect data in terms of the ambience of the store, in terms of how well the services help, and then how well the products are being served to the customers. So both are actually the same role, try to analyze data. It's just that the data scientist is in a more technical space. The decision scientist is in a more business space, right? So we can say that both are equal. And in our case, in House of Analytics, we do actually have interns. We are teaching them more to build their business context first, right? Like what we just mentioned earlier, connecting the dots is important. And for those who don't have the technical experience first, it's really important to understand the context, right? So we do have a lot of interns coming to House of Analytics from age 12 to age 18 right now. We do have a range of interns because they do want to understand the field. They want to understand the context first, and that's what we do actually. We actually bring them to the field and to take a look at what is happening and how do you actually create really interesting case studies, as well as understanding how to take the insights and how to take the actions from the field, right? So if, let's say, the students are interested in taking in learning about data and analytics, of course the things that they need to, if they want to become a data scientist, of course it has to come from a more STEM perspective, right? Like mathematics or engineering. But if they want to become a decision scientist, actually decision scientists can come from any different background. Right now, we have a consultant whose background is actually from dentistry. So one from dentistry, another one from engineering, another one from business. So a wide range of spectrum, actually. It's just that when they want to become, let's say, an analyst, right? Whether it's a decision scientist or data scientist, the one thing that they need to foster is, number one, don't jump into conclusion. Whenever we find something, what we see is not actually the problem, right? Be curious and ask questions, hypothesize, and don't just analyze from the desk, right? Go into the field and try to understand people. So I think that's some of the things that the students must consider when they want to jump into analytics, right? And so to close this sharing session, we want a really interesting statement from Dan Ariely, the professor of psychology and behavioral economics from Duke University, right? So he said that students as well as executives need to conduct experiments, right? So go to the field, conduct experiments, then examine the data, right? In order to gain the insights to make better decisions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, that those career insights and distinguishing the difference between these careers is really important to students. We have
Sean, Tasha. Brian, I heard about internship. Is there any internship opportunity for our students probably?
I heard that.
Sure.
Yep.
Right now,
Yeah,
we have for interns right now. They are actually from university and then just graduated from high school. They've been interning actually before they graduated. Continued with us, right? Because they wanted to learn about the business case, the business context, and we do bring them to the field to experience and talk, actually, to present some of their thoughts. And we also, like we mentioned, right, we wanted to groom them to become the decision scientists, right? Because since they don't have actually right now the technical part of becoming the data scientist, so it's really important for them to understand the context, how to differentiate between symptom and problem, and how do they apply that to a business perspective.
I see. That's a great opportunity. How can our students connect to you guys? Through an Instagram account or I don't know?
We do have an Instagram account as well as a LinkedIn account, House of Analytics. And if let's say they are interested to intern with us, we can give our emails to Pa Adit. Yeah, actually, Pa Adit and Pa Hadi actually already have our emails, and I think our emails can be distributed to students who are interested to intern with House of Analytics.
Okay, so for those of you, if you're thinking or planning to have internship with Sean and Tasha in House of Analytics, feel free to contact Pahadi or me or Mr. Brian. We would love to share how to connect with them. And right now, I heard, Brian, there are several students who want to ask.
Yeah, we have a few questions here on the Google Doc, which I'm going to filter them just based on things that maybe we haven't touched yet. What role does developing algorithms play in your daily life? I mean, do you create algorithms to analyze the data, or do you utilize ones that already exist? Is that part of the job?
So I think I'll answer this question first. So I think Tasha would also like to jump in as well because she's the most experienced with the algorithms. So when it comes to algorithm, it's actually the last stage of data analytics. When algorithms are basically models or even predictive models where they basically kind of are set of logics, right? That says if you have information A, then you would analyze it in this way, and then it would create this recommendation, right? It's kind of like a decision tree where if revenue goes down, we have to do this, or if the customer is male, recommend this. If the customer is female, recommend product B or something like that. So, but in order to create the algorithm, you would need to understand what are the patterns or how do the customers behave, what is actually going on in the field. And the algorithm or models are kind of like mathematical formula to to say that this is actually what's happening, right? If there's this set of data, right, then what you need to do is analyze it in this way. So algorithm is basically what you see uh, in Instagram Explorer, or the advertisement. It usually recommends content based on your preference or even history in your history, right? So algorithm is actually kind of like the recommendation part or even the last part where it just automate things. Uh, but basically it's not how people think it is, where it's analyzing the data, but it's actually just automating what you already know and what you would do when it comes to kind of like um, recommending or even doing advertisement, especially for Instagram or YouTube.
Yes, that's correct, right? So like what Sean has mentioned, an algorithm is an automation where behind that we already have a logic. So take for example Netflix. You watch Netflix today, right? You just register, then you watch comedy movies. The next day, when you open Netflix again, the number one recommendation that they will give is comedy. However, day two, you watch romance. Day three, you watch horror, you watch thriller, up until the 30th day, right? Netflix will recommend you different types of movies, different types of TV shows. And they do that because they analyze your behavior, right? The recommendation part is actually an automation of the logic behind your behavior. So they will collect for from day 1 to day 30, take a look at your preference of movies with logic, let's say to say, oh, actually, Sean, in weekdays, he likes to watch horror movies, but in weekends, he likes to watch romance movies. So in the 30th day, you watch it on weekends, it will give you romance movies, right? It will recommend you romance movies because it has already learned your behavior for the past 30 days. So that's what an algorithm does. in terms of what you call a machine learning or automation?
I will ask a question from the doc. So roughly how much do we earn annually when we work in this field, the area?
Okay, so in terms of how much, right? If you start, right, let's say as a junior analyst in e-commerce right now, what we know so far, as in the compensation, right? Per month, we do know it's between 7 to 10 million per month in e-commerce, as well as in banking right now. Right, so in Indonesia, it's around 7 to 10 million per month. So annually, yeah, you will get around 120 million per year, right? Yeah.
There's another question. Can you share what it's like for your daily routine as a decision scientist, the activities that you do usually from 9 to 5?
Oh, okay. Okay, so talking about our daily routine, right? So as a consultant in decision science, we have this idea of for us, the work-life balance that we have is that whenever you want to work, you work. Whenever you want to take a break, you take a break, right? So it doesn't start at 9 to 5, right? If you want to start at, let's say, 1 p.m., it's okay. As long as at the end of the day, you give an output, right? If you want to work on the weekends, you want to update on the weekends, it's okay. As long as we are clear on the objective and you've given an output at the end of the day of your what we say is your objective. Right? So every project that we have, we usually have milestones. For example, we have a project that runs around 3 months, right? So before the project is conducted, we usually create a project management Excel sheet, right? Where everyone can see the Excel sheet and everyone can see the milestone on a daily basis, as well as a weekly basis and monthly basis. So we know our target, let's say per month, we need to have a once a week update with the client. Then we know that actually we need to, let's say, finish this by day 3 or by day 2, so that we can discuss this before by the end of the week we update with the client. So that's basically our day-to-day activities.
So I'm gonna
And
ask,
it's also, yeah.
So there's a question that asked, in your experience, is it more valuable to use data analytics or for product-oriented or service-oriented markets?
Okay, so I think in terms of using analytics is actually wide, right? It's not just about product or it's just about service. It can be applied in any space as long as we are able to understand the context, as well as we understand then the objective and the kind of information that we want to get out of it, right? Or the decisions that we want to create. Take, for example, the gelato part, right? We're not just talking about products or also service, but we also talk about the space or the ambience, right? Where Sean has mentioned that when we go there, it's cramped, right? And that in our project, that in itself is data, right? The data that we and that we convert into an information and an insight where if you wanna, let's say, you create an experience in your gelato store, then you need to be able to create a whole space where it's not cramped. Okay, so one more last question.
Ms. Tasha, there is a question from student. I think this question is asked by many students. He said like this: what is the minimum skill for analyzing data required to remain competitive in the business for those who are not naturally talented in numbers and figures? Could you give just an insight about this question?
Okay, so how much, right? In our experience, if let's say, depending on the objective, right? If let's say you want to create some kind of a, let's say, mathematical model, right? The rule of thumb that we usually use is you need to have at least 100 rows with maximum 100 columns, right? So 100 variables, 100 rows. However, in our cases, sometimes it's not that ideal, right? We do have a client that wants to engage with a more qualitative experience, qualitative data. And the things that we are doing is that it's not, again, it depends on the objective, right? If it's a more qualitative approach, then we need to be able to create our own objective as well as our own metrics, and how do we want to deal with that. But if we're talking about qualitative, then the rule of thumb would be around 100, right? Sean, would you like to add more?
Yep. So especially for any kinds of data, right? So what Tasha mentioned is some clients would like to see from a qualitative data point of view, right? And the important part isn't necessarily the data itself, or isn't actually the converting the quantitative into something complicated, right? But it's actually trying to extract what does the data mean, right? What does it say? How can we actually use this to our advantage? And if we go back to the Jon Snow part, yes, there was some quantitative in there, right? But what he was doing is he was actually mapping it out. He was actually mapping the data and see like where are the people dying, right? And if you think about it, right, it's actually very simple. But the insight, or the actually trying to get the meaning out of it is actually the most difficult part, right? What does it say? What does it mean, right? Those kind of questions are actually very, very it's not straightforward, right? Just because you found out, oh, everyone is dying here. Okay, what does it mean, right? That's actually the hardest part, right? You have to make hypothesis. You actually have to, connect, what people say, right? And in the instance of Jon Snow, what he did was he looked into the field, right? And he actually interviewed the people, or the families who have a member died in those areas, right? And he asked them, what did you do? What did you eat? What did you drink, right? And so he connected the map to what the people say, and they all said, oh, we all drank from this source, right? And then when he found that pattern, everyone who died was drinking from this source at this source, right? Okay, there's something going on here. And so when he actually tried and closed the tap, to actually close the pump, suddenly the death rates were going down. So he wasn't actually using the data to make something complicated. He was using the data to actually see, was he right or not? Did it actually support what he was seeing or not? So it was actually more, again, connecting the dots, right? Not trying to make some mathematical formula or algorithm out of it. So data analytics is there to help you understand the world rather than trying to make something complicated.
Thank you
Correct.
so much,
Yeah.
Don, Tasha.
Thank you
Is there
so
any
much.
addition you want to add, Tasha?
No.
Okay. Okay. You've been shared about of course, our students, they are wondering about the salary that they will get if they're going to this path obviously. And I believe that there will be some challenges as well, especially for you guys. You have faced many different challenges. Lastly, maybe this is the last question. Could you please share to us what are the challenges to your career? Um, Maybe at the end, give us a motivational speech, closing statement. Um, yeah, Sean and Tasha, thank you.
Okay, so I think one of, especially maybe in my experience, the challenges in this particular career, right? Since we're a consultant and we are in the space of data analytics or data, I think the most challenging part is actually how do we actually learn from our failures, right? A lot of people always say, like, you should learn from your failure, right? You should learn from your mistakes. But what's actually always bothering me is, okay, how do we actually learn from it, right? No one really goes around and, they always say learn from your failures, but how do we actually learn from it? And one thing that I guess an advice from my experience on how to actually learn from your failure is actually to self-reflect, right? And data analytics is also a self-reflection for businesses, right? Did we actually do well? Was the product a good product, right? Are we actually doing good as a business or not? So the abilities to self-reflect is actually a very important ability, especially for this kind of career, right, in data analytics, because it's always about learning, and data is there to help you to learn, right? Did you actually do correctly or not, right? So in this particular career, if anyone is interested in it, the most important part is to actually be keen to learn. Learning about new things, especially for us as a consultant, we're not only in e-commerce, we're in banking, we're in airlines, we're in logistics, we're in even SME like restaurants or gelato. So we have to be ready to learn in new different contexts, different industry, right? And as data scientists or decision scientists, we also have to be ready to learn new things, right? Not just in our own industry, but every kind of industry, because we never know that what our experiences before can actually help us in new fields, in new kind of work, right? So I would say that for those who are interested in this kind of career, the most important part is actually definitely learning, because that's the best way that we can make better decisions in the future, and actually improving ourselves.
That's great. Yeah, being a reflective learner and a lifelong learner, it's really important.
I think that that's a great way to wrap it up, bringing it back to education and the fact that it applies to so many different fields. The learning process never ends. It's really excellent. If Mr. Hadi has nothing left, then maybe I can close or.
Okay, I'm going to pass it to students now. Corey, Odelin, and Angie is ready to take the session. They'll be coming up with several announcements. Please proceed.
All right, so that was a whole bunch of new information presented by our wonderful guests, Mr. Sean and Anastasia. And what did you think of the session, Corey?
I think it was so informative. I didn't know data analysis has so many steps involved to be used in different ways and different purposes.
Yes, even though there's a huge amount of information about this career, it might be important for us in the future.
And there will be more talks just like this one. Many speakers will be featured in their respective topics, and they're going to share all sorts of experiences and memories they've made throughout the years.
Yes, that is correct. I'm pretty sure you guys will be very excited about this session because not only you can get to listen and understand the speakers, but you can ask any questions to the speakers and get more information for your future on what you want to be. And remember, choose this career from your heart, not following your friends because you do not want to regret in the future, right?
Right, so let's move on to the next part where Mr. Hadi will be sharing slides about the next breakout session.
So after this, we're going to have another 2 sessions.
Oh, what are those?
The first session will consist of information systems, creative branding and business, renewable energy, and risk management. Now, these will be held from 9:30 to 10:30 later.
And the second, from 11 to 12, these are the sessions: medical study, creative animation, urban planning and architecture, and accounting and finance.
Please make sure you have received the link for both breakout sessions.
And when you get into your selected meeting sessions, if you have any questions for the speakers during the meeting, please type it down in the chat box and we will make sure that your questions will be answered. Have fun!
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sean and Anastasia from House Analytics. Thank you, Mr. Adit and Mr. Brian. Thank you, students. We will be working on the small breakout sessions after this. We'll see you in the next Career Talk. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.